Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to Giving Forest with Yogi and the Bear. We're very excited to have Jimmy Warne on. Actually, my college roommate, and I've watched all of the great things he's been doing in this world, and we wanted to have him on and introduce him and show all the great things that he's doing to make this world a better place. So, Jimmy, welcome aboard. Hi, Yogi. How you doing?
Good morning, Rich.
Good morning. Thank you. Good to see you guys, and a pleasure to be on your new show. Congratulations, by the way. I appreciate you including me.
Thank you. Season 1, episode 2. So we wanted to have you on early on, Jimmy. So maybe we can start out for the people who don't know who you are. Jimmy, tell us a little bit about your history, your background, and all of that good stuff, please.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate it. As Rich shared, we were college roommates at Arizona State University, and Rich and I were both on football scholarships there and had the pleasure of meeting each other and making lifelong friends, not only with each other, but with other teammates. And that was a great experience with a good team, and that's the wonderful element of team sports is when you get a multitude of different people together from different cultures, and then they combine and bring themselves together into a great team effort. So I think that what separated us and why we had success on the field with the Rose Bowl championship and some of those aspects of team building and a unique aspect of team building in sports with the multi-cultures. So that's what I always like to teach in my older years as a former athlete and team member, is those aspects that I thought that separated us from other teams.
Great. And talk a little bit about what you've done with the naming of professional teams. We wanted to start out a little bit about that and what your big push is from your perspective about what needs to change in that respect.
Well, I've always been an advocate of these issues, and I was just sharing during Super Bowl week last week in Arizona. I attended a couple events, including a film viewing of a show regarding mascots, similar to the film that I made regarding mascots. And as a former player and one of the first to have long hair in professional sports, back in 1992, Sports Illustrated did an article on me titled Urban Indian. So they asked a common question regarding the mascot issue, and we're slowly getting there to where there's only one team from each of the 3 major professional sports that have a tribal mascot. So obviously with the Super Bowl a few days ago, we had to endure the chant of the fans. So I ended up muting the Super Bowl often just because it just gets tiresome after all these years of sharing our perspectives. And still, there's still some teams and owners of these teams that resist changing their names to be a more appropriate in today's time. Many people go, what's the big deal about being a mascot? But I don't see other races of people protesting that they're not included as mascots. So I think that's an indicator right there that our African-American brothers and sisters aren't wanting to be the black skins, or our Mexican or Latino populations don't want to be the brown skins and be the brunt of the fans primarily that are portraying these negative imageries. So I'm still living it every day. And for whatever reason, America allows it for us as indigenous people, but would not allow it for other races of people that now are here in America.
Hey, Jim, let me ask you that conversation. Can you give us just a little background? Because it's fascinating. A little retrospective look at your family going way, all the way back to Custer, and maybe bring us forward.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm trying to turn off my phone here. I apologize.
No worries.
Just, okay. Give us a little historical perspective there.
Yeah, as an advocate and educator and filmmaker and all the different hats that I wear currently, it's always been based in root of who I am as a Lakota person. And being trained that way early in life allowed for me to know who I am as an OGLALA Lakota. Now, most of America knows us as the Sioux Nation, the Great Sioux Empire, but our actual name is the Lakota, Nakota, and Dakota of the Ocheti Shakoi, the 7 council flyers. But many of the tribes in America were renamed for the benefit of English pronunciation or based on other elements in renaming tribes. So again, many people go, oh, you're Sioux. You know, they don't know the Oglala band of the Lakota Nation. And that's the band of my people are Red Cloud and Crazy Horse, for instance. So I have that history. And then my grandfather, Stabber, rode with Red Cloud and Crazy Horse and was at the White House in 1872 negotiating peace with President Grant back then. So it's a wonderful history to have, and we have photographs of Grandpa Stabber in Washington, D.C. when they were visiting, negotiating peace. But what they found out on that visit was they were brought to view the armory, and they saw the extensive mass of armaments, of rifles and cannons and other military technology that they had at the time that was obviously superior in numbers to what we had. So that was the beginning of Red Cloud deciding that he would try to negotiate a treaty. And then Crazy Horse said, nope, I'm going to keep fighting until the end. So that was a unique perspective for my grandfather to experience those two elements, witnessing firsthand what was available to the U.S. military at the time.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. I'm sorry. And so from that standpoint, it's interesting because I've known you for so many decades. That was a newer thing, knowing that I can't refer to you as Sioux. Like, you know, so to people out there, you know, I think you're nervous whether you say Native American or Indian. Can you give us a little bit of some guidelines with that, please, Jimmy?
Yeah, and I learned this from my mom, Beverly Stabber Warne, who is a great advocate, and both my brother and I learned from her. But, you know, what are we called? She mentions very eloquently that they still don't know who we are in 2023. And that's an element where people go, oh, what do we call you now? Are you a Native American, American Indian, indigenous, Sioux, or Lakota? You know, it's all these titles that we've had. And I tend to start leaning towards indigenous because Indian came from what a lost explorer that many people know as Columbus was lost in the Caribbean. He never did step foot in America. So to say that he discovered America is just wrong, factually, because he was in the Caribbean and then what is now known as Colombia in South America. So again, when you have those perspectives of knowing who you are, and I'm so glad that I had that growing up in Phoenix, Arizona. I didn't get to grow up on my homelands in South Dakota, Pine Ridge Reservation in particular. That happened because when my parents got married in 1962, Rapid City, South Dakota was still not allowing Indian people to rent homes in Rapid City. So they were still ending their No Indians Allowed signs back then, similar to the African-American experience in the South. So my mom recalls seeing those No Indians Allowed signs and wondered why are they don't want us in their store or their restaurant. And then her grandfather at the time, 75 years ago, said, because they don't know who we are. Well, today, many people still don't know who we are. And that's evidenced by the allowance of having mascots, for instance, in the Super Bowl was very frustrating. The leagues, the NFL asked the Kansas City fans not to do the chant. And I said, yeah, good luck with that. So, you know, it's ingrained in their culture. They think it's appropriate. And it's so personal to them that they don't like indigenous people that are offended by it. They attack us. So I know it's a frustration that we have to deal with just being identified in America today. Who are we, Native Americans or what? I'm leaning towards indigenous because by the academic definition, we are indigenous to this land for thousands and thousands of years.
Wow.
Right.
So I want to segue to, I was lucky enough to go actually to New York with you to the Manhattan Film Festival, which how did Fox approach you and how did that all come about? We want to play a couple-minute clip here in a second. Maybe you can kind of preface that for us, Jimmy.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And that was the result of my first film, Seventh Generation. And, we had success with Seventh Generation getting a lot of attention, not only in the US, but internationally with Amazon Prime here in the US, as well as the European Amazon's streaming platforms. So it was wonderful to get that out there. And as a result, Fox producers that were doing these social justice piece, the various for voting and kneeling for the Kaepernick issue, and they wanted to do a social justice piece on the mascot issue. And one of the friends of our producer, Mark, knew Tom, another friend of mine, who suggested that he watched Seventh Generation. So again, it was kind of a referral from watching my past film work, where the Fox producers saw, oh, this is what we want. We want to go more in depth than just addressing the mascot issue in and of itself. We want to tell the true story in terms of what are the perspectives and realities of Indian country in contemporary United States. So that was wonderful to have that opportunity to co-produce and write that piece. And we did a power drive to Pine Ridge so we could get the on-location shots that I think was very powerful, to the point where we were nominated for 3 sports Emmys, and one of them was for cinematography at Pine Ridge. So it was a wonderful experience being able to share my perspectives on Thanksgiving pregame Fox NFL, where over 30 million people viewed that pregame show. So I was able to educate some folks on Thanksgiving before they watched football and had their turkey.
It could have been a better intro. We're going to hit that. Thank you, Jimmy. That's perfect.
Many more helpings on the way as we consider our history on Thanksgiving Day and the understanding on how using Indian mascots truly impacts Native American tribes.
The Washington Redskins. These days it sounds shocking when you hear someone say that, doesn't it? Well, the Washington football team had that name before they were the Washington football team. It dates back to the early 1930s when they were the Boston Redskins. After decades of complaints and in the rise of racial awareness this summer, the team decided to move on from that name. But as former NFL player Jim Warne, a Lakota tribal member who's now a Native activist, wants us all to understand, no longer using nicknames that indigenous people find offensive and dropping the use of their likeness as mascots is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to understanding the plight of Native Americans today.
I never did play for a team with a Native mascot, but I played against teams with Native mascots. So obviously I was a target of people that wanted to say things like scalp the Indian or cut your hair. When we hear that term red skin, we know that it's a term of our pelts, our scalps, that were bounties that were paid to bounty hunters. This negative imagery is getting most of the press, yet there's deeper issues in Indian country. We learn a lot about genocide in other countries, but we don't learn about the genocide that happened here. Back in 1890, the 7th Cavalry really wanted to get us back for Custer's last stand. When you look at the Wounded Knee gravesite, my family is number 18 on that list of families that perished that day. Being an American citizen, many of us don't have that experience of visiting a mass grave, of feeling that trauma from many generations ago. Pine Ridge, my home reservation, is the poorest county in the United States. So the average family income is under $10,000 per year. Unfortunately, Indian country has the highest rate of COVID-19 in the world. And when I go home and I hear of the people that are passing away just because they can't keep themselves warm, that's something that's very challenging. When you think of Paha Sapa, which means Black Hills, that's our sacred land. U.S. policy saw that our culture, our ceremonies were savage and heathen. So we could have been singing a song for happy birthday or a wedding, and they saw it as war drums. Black Elk said it would take 7 generations to heal our circle after Wounded Knee. So as we gather on this special holiday, let's give thanks for inclusion. Let's give thanks for culture. Let's give thanks for who we are as two-leggeds.
Indeed, let's give thanks for how far we've come, while also being thankful for the wisdom to recognize there's much more ground we need to cover. As Warren told us, simply dropping mascot nicknames and thinking the problem is solved is akin to no longer doing blackface and believing that solves racism.
Wow, well done.
Powerful, right?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And Menifee, Kurt Menifee, I want to give him a shout out because he was really a champion for our piece, and he was really adding to that perspective. So I really appreciate the Fox team for doing that. So,
hey Jim, let me have a question. When did you start your activism? First of all, when did all that movement start? Kind of, taking a look at changing the names and it becoming offensive to some people, and the voice to maybe make change. And where did you enter into, participation? Was it at the beginning of that movement, or it already started and you joined at a certain time?
Oh, it was long before I was alive, the movement started. And then it's been in the Supreme Court on a couple of occasions for multi-years of going through the Supreme Court process and the district courts and everything else. And they always found something to deny the win,
right,
for technicality. The first Supreme Court case we won years ago, back in the early 80s, as I recall, but they came up with latches to where you only brought this up in your older years. If you were truly offended, you would have brought this up when you were younger. So isn't that interesting? The Supreme Court found a way to allow these teams to continue their ignorant portrayal of who I am as a human being. So I came along, obviously, as one of the first professional players with long hair. I got a lot of attention because of my hair, which brought it to the, obviously, the mascot issue. And then the good old R word, the old redskin, I always share is it wasn't our skins per se, it was our pelts. And a red skin was, you could trade that in for to the state governments or the federal government for a bounty that they were providing $200 for red skins. And so obviously that's something we don't like, and that's gone finally. But Schneider from the Washington team was forced to do that. He said 10 years ago he would never change the name after the second Supreme Court case. And he said you could use all caps. Well, never has come, because now they had to change the name, thankfully, because of FedEx and Nike and Pepsi, I believe, pulling their sponsorships. So he had to change the name in order to keep the money. So again, it was all those years of advocacy and protesting that finally accumulated during the George Floyd time, with social justice issues being at the forefront, that two professional teams had to change their name. So again, that advocacy made the difference, so that even though the owner didn't want to change the name, he was forced to because of the financial impact.
Gotcha. Thank you. What early on, I mean, what was the backlash you personally? Have you experienced any resistance or any kind of, what was that like?
There's always gonna, and I know whenever I post these things, I get low numbers because so many people value what I do in terms of advocating for people with disabilities and my work at the School of Medicine in South Dakota and Arizona, as well as advocating for Indian culture. But yet when it comes to these issues, their resistance to support it, because it's already in their normed lifestyle to have us as a mascot or to be able to dress like us in Halloween. Same thing happened with blackface that was mentioned in the film. It took a long time for blackface to become inappropriate, to where many people are still getting those old pictures of them in blackface for Halloween or for African American Month or whatever they were doing to mock the African American culture. Now that's not appropriate. And hopefully, maybe not in my lifetime, but for my grandchildren, those things will not be appropriate for people to do to us as natives. So that's what I'm fighting for, is those future generations.
Speaking of generations, can we talk a little bit about your movie? We're going to play a little preview. If you haven't seen the movie, go. It's on Amazon. It's an amazing movie. So talk a little bit about that. And we're going to play a little preview when you're done, Jimmy.
Yeah, Seventh Generation. I finally got to make my film behind the camera, because after my short experience in the NFL and professional football, after that, I went into stunt work and acting. So that was a dream of mine. I wanted to be, in the NFL as well as in Hollywood. And at that time, I was only thinking as an actor in front of the camera. But my frustration of the roles that I had to play and some of the stereotypes in Hollywood, that was very frustrating for me. So I ended up kind of retiring from that just because of all the different frustrations I had with different producers or casting agents that wanted me to portray the Hollywood stereotype of who I am as a Native. I'm not that good of an actor. So I can't portray myself negatively or add to the Hollywood stereotype. Now, fortunately, today in 2023, it's much different than 20 years ago when I started my stunt work and acting career. I may go back. I won't be doing stunts in my old age. I'll find a young person to do that. But, there's now shows and productions that are controlled and have producers and writers that are Native. So suddenly we're being portrayed in accurate ways. And now it's suddenly going, oh, wow, what a new thing. All we're doing is telling the truth instead of portraying the Hollywood stereotype. But since everyone knows the John Wayne University of Indian culture, all these years, everyone's been exposed to that. Now they're getting actual portrayals of who we are as indigenous people. So I may get back into acting, who knows?
And then so that was just the motive behind creating the movie, or to educate your
the
saying,
seventh generation,
your tagline.
Oh yeah, the ignorance by design. That's something that I've been dealing with, because people are just ignorant to who I am as a Native person. So again, that's why we're still dealing with a lot of these things. When someone says, "Hey, do you speak Indian?" I go, "I don't know. Do you speak European?" So that's a reality that I deal with a lot just in daily life. But with seventh generation, the philosophy behind that with Black Elk was we must, as human beings, as individuals, represent our people and our family 7 generations ago, as well as 7 generations ahead. So when you think of that numerically, that's almost 250 years of responsibility that each of us have, not only to represent the past in a good way, but set the table, if you will, and the path for future generations that I'll never see, those future grandchildren. So we all have that as two-leggeds as human beings, that responsibility. I think we would all benefit more in today's society if we thought more that way.
Very good point. So I'm gonna hit this for you, just a little preview. Like I said, try to get on Amazon and watch this great film. Oh no, we have an audio issue with that. I am so sorry about that. We're gonna do your highlights reel instead, okay, Jimmy? The audio cut out on that. So
no worries. Always technical issues.
Always technical issues. Okay, here we go.
Mr. Warne, Jim, you brought your sense of humor.
I've been fortunate to act in a few movies. I don't really consider myself an actor, but I'm in movies. And that's when they need a big Indian, they give me a call. And around, people will go, "Do you speak Indian?" And I go, "I don't know. Do you speak European?" I speak Lakota.
And I hope you spend more time in Washington helping to influence minds here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually at FCC this afternoon. Let's say, who here has ever blown off studying for a test until the day before your test? How many? Everybody has. So, for those that haven't, just imagine if you can.
That isn't the old John Wayne movies where he shoots one bullet and 5 Indians fall.
Goes to Arizona State where he becomes an absolute stud and superstar. Then to the NFL. But now here in San Diego and working so much.
I'm a member of the OGLALA Lakota Nation. I'm also a Sun Devil, and I brought the warrior philosophy to Sun Devil football as a member of the Rose Bowl championship team of 1987.
Sun Devils were at last Rose Bowl bound.
I was a big, powerful guy when I was playing football, but now that's nothing compared to the power that I have of the mind.
The message is similar in terms of what I learned regarding the medicine wheel philosophy, having balance in life, and a positive message to give back to these kids.
That's my Sun Devil story.
What's yours?
Woo!
One thing I can guarantee Kia, you only get these if you win the Rose Bowl.
Say it's a great Sun Devil, Jim Warne.
A casting director said, hey, do you want to be on a TV show? So suddenly my Hollywood career began.
Stay here.
You see, someone tipped him off that Windreamer here wasn't going to be running today, and he laid down a whole lot of dough. And well, he doesn't like it when things change.
Yet change is difficult, you know. Everyone put your hands together like this, like you would. Now change your fingers.
It's all good stuff, Jimmy.
Oh, thank you so much. It's kind of fun watching that when I had with a little less gray hair. I like to prefer to call them knowledge highlights, but anyways. But it's cool to see those things in the past and how it's evolved over the years in terms of my advocacy and educating and working at the School of Medicine addressing disability issues in Indian country. So it's wonderful to be able to write grants. Although I prefer writing scripts, I think writing grants for various tribal nations and universities to address Indian issues in public health disparities and disability issues has been a wonderful experience for me to represent my father, Jim Sr., in a good way, who had MS for many years. As you're well aware, Richie, you saw his progression with the reality of disability. So, and he adopted you as a son as well. So
I was definitely over there for all my Christmas and for Thanksgiving as Mama Warne and Papa Warne, and they took great care of me. It was only a mile away from ASU. So it was very convenient to go over, and I was their sort of surrogate son, and they were my surrogate parents. So very happy to know them. And your mother has been, she just got put into the Hall of Fame. And
the South Dakota Hall of Fame with former governors and things of that nature. So it's wonderful that she's being recognized for her work, because she's 83 and still teaching at South Dakota State Nursing.
So she's been doing that forever. Yes. And then your brother, Don.
Yes, we're very proud of Don. He just left the University of North Dakota Med School to run he's now an administrator for Johns Hopkins Indigenous Health. So it's wonderful that he now has a bigger platform, the world platform of Johns Hopkins, to address some of our public health disparities that he specializes in.
And he went to Stanford, obviously, to receive his medical degree, but he ties in sort of, the native side of medicine as well. And
we're really proud of him because he always, and this is what we were trained to do early, both of Don and I, were to make sure we represent our people well and indigenize the curriculum or make it work for us in our populations as best we can. So I think that's the role that we serve in the world of academia, as well as our role as advocates. We were advocates before we knew what the word meant, when we were going to restaurants and I'd go through the kitchen to find a way for Dad's wheelchair to go in, because that was before the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that's essentially the civil rights for people with disabilities, similar to the American Indian Civil Rights Act of 1968, 4 years after the Civil Rights Act. So all of these things legislatively and through regulation and federal law, I'm advocating to make sure we keep that sovereignty for Indian country, as well as the rights for our people in the world of healthcare.
As well as writing huge multi-million-dollar grants so you can make all of this stuff happen, correct? That's a big part of it.
With the philanthropy part, which I know you're a big part, representing your brother and your family in a good way and giving back.
Thank you.
Those footprints you're leaving for your generations, Richie, you're living that philosophy. And that's what I want to share with everybody on the show here is we all have that capacity to leave good footprints for past and future generations. And I think that's what we all have. Your audience is obviously like-minded people that want to make a difference in whatever capacity they can. So what can we do together and educate each other on different respect? And there was a Kansas City fan, an elderly Euro-American woman that was there with a women's group, but she came to our lecture because she wanted to learn, why is it such an issue? And she learned a lot listening to indigenous people. So again, it's about sharing information, doing what we can to better the world. The world continues to evolve, and we want it to evolve in a good way for those future generations. So whatever we can do collectively makes a difference.
Yeah, it's a great point, Jimmy. So I know where you got a little bit of time left. Maybe talk about some of the things you have coming up and what you're working on now and what we can look forward to. And we'll add that if you go to the Giving Forest YouTube, we'll add some links and whatnot. So you can take a look at that, the rest of the video that we were going to show you on the seventh generation. But talk about some of the other things you have going on, Jimmy, and what you're working on now.
Yeah, in fact, I got a Zoom meeting with Department of Labor to address American Indian employment and healthcare and disability issues. That's my next issue with my academic hat. And then as a producer, our current film, Remember the Children, is addressing the U.S. Indian boarding school story, where there were over 400 Indian boarding schools. And in the early days, they were allowed to kidnap Indian children and steal Indian children to get them to learn the American system. So now with modern technology, and many may recall the Pope was in Canada apologizing for all the kids that died in those residential government and church schools, but they didn't mention America. So again, that's something I'm trying to do, is bring that story. So now with modern technology, we're finding all those unmarked graves of Indian children. Thousands of kids died at these schools through abuse and starvation or suicide. My uncle Larry, at 9 years old, walked for 3 days to escape the Jesuit priests that were beating him for speaking Lakota, his language. So as a 9-year-old, he escaped and walked 3 days back home. So those stories happened, and fortunately, the remaining boarding schools are better now. They're almost sanctuaries for many Native kids that need that support. But the early days of boarding schools was to beat the language out of the children, beat the culture out of the children. And then these children were obviously dealing with those traumatic issues, being stolen from their family and then suddenly having their hair cut and all their clothes burnt and being forced to speak a foreign language. So those are elements that, you know, in our curriculum, we just don't know. Again, that's the Ignorance by Design, one of my next projects coming up after this Remember the Children. That will be, we're having our Colorado premiere in March, as well as Phoenix at the Phoenix Film Festival coming up. If you're in Phoenix, come check it out.
Yeah, and get us all those links, Jimmy, and we'll post all those things. I mean, I remember one of the things that was pretty powerful is you showed the little handcuffs. Mm-hmm. They had little handcuffs for all the little kids. It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is,
to see what they did.
It's a terrible history, but we can't not to forget it. We need to remember it and teach it so we can move forward together. And I think that's happening slowly, painfully slowly, but hopefully I'll see more of that in my lifetime as we continue on our journey.
So Jimmy, you have you have productions coming up, you have some movies, and obviously progress has been made with Washington changing the name, but there's still work to be done. So besides the movies, what other, is there Congress or other things behind the scenes still?
Yeah, I was just walking the halls of Congress 2 weeks ago advocating for youth mentor programs and juvenile justice. And I hate juvenile justice, it's children justice. But we put that title of juvenile so it doesn't sound so, you know, bad with our children. But I want to swim upstream farther and get to the root causes of some of these issues that lead our children, often with disability issues that lead them to some of these behaviors that lead them into the system. So we're trying to get upstream a little bit to make those changes and indigenize the approach for Indian country, which has obviously been a model that's worked for me over my 30 plus years of academia. So it's wonderful to wear many hats, and essentially my role as a filmmaker, I'm teaching through the medium of film. So instead of a lecture hall, I get the digital world, which is wonderful.
Great. So, and one other thing I did want to ask that we kind of moved off of, you mentioned COVID with the situation. What is the situation now with Native population?
Significantly, with Navajo Nation was the epicenter of COVID in the world.
Right.
But with the new administration and declaring an emergency and allowing the tribal nation themselves to address the issue of getting the information out on vaccines and protection from our current pandemic, because as Native nations, we've dealt with many pandemics with European contact. They brought over many diseases that we never had here. So again, this was another pandemic that we had to go through as indigenous people. And as long as we were able to get that resource so that we could apply the approach, again, indigenized, now Navajo Nation is one of the examples worldwide in terms of how we can manage COVID-19 and other pandemics, because there'll be more pandemics. Mother Earth is trying to warn us. We're just ignoring her.
Right.
Very,
very good point. You want anything, Jimmy? I know you have to go. I know we're holding you up on the heading to your next Senate meeting. You want to say anything on the way out? Any sort of closing? I know.
Well, again, to your audience, thank you for your interest in Indian country, or whatever you want to call us, indigenous, or whatever we're called today. But again, it's a reality of we must respect the original people here that left footprints for thousands and thousands of years. And now as America, as we get into just past 500 years, we're very young, and we still need to grow and evolve together. And that's the main point, is what can we do to respect our differences, yet be that mosaic of cultures together. And that's the ultimate goal if we're going to succeed as a human race. So make that difference, think indigenous, and just keep making those footprints for your future generations.
Well, we appreciate that. I was fortunate enough to go to a Super Bowl event with you, which was really interesting and fascinating. Rise Against Hate is the name of the group. And they had a panel that were talking, and one of the young ladies was, Native American, and she talks about everybody thinks every Native American is different. She talks about the difference of Florida, Arizona, all the different type of, indigenous cultures and all of that good stuff. So, it's thank you for pushing the education, Jimmy, and inspiring people to get out there and learn more.
Yes, I appreciate your time, and thank you for inviting me to your new show. Again, congratulations, you guys, and you're making a difference for those future generations. So
thank you, Jimmy.
Well, we appreciate it. We're going to have you back, Jimmy. Okay.
Sounds good. Palamia.
Okay.
Thank you. Washtelo.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Well, Pila, Jimmy. Right?
All right. Take care.
Okay. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, that was pretty awesome. What do you think? Right? Yeah. What a good person. This is probably a good time to showcase our sponsor.
We'd appreciate it.
You want a quick mention? Sponsor, I'll hit this.
Absolutely. So we're fortunate to have Cashware is a livable, luxury, affordable lifestyle brand that's been serving the hotels, 4- and 5-star hotels, for over 22 years. They deliver beautiful comfort and like no other. So let's take a look at Cashware.
Thank you. Get to this here. Okay, so
Thank you to our sponsors, Cashware.
yes, thank you so much. So what did you think, Yogi?
He's an amazing individual. I know he's, I saw that Fox clip, and I had heard that he was on the Hill, but I didn't know the depth of what he was doing for the Native Americans, even all the grant writing and his family history. But he's a pretty amazing story in his own right. You've known him for how many years now?
I mean, since I actually threw shot put against him in high school. So 1983, talking about, I mean, he's 6'8". Can't really see it, in our stream, but he's 6'8". He was, over a few hundred pounds back in the day. So, walking out, looking at somebody like that, I'm like, wow, that was the largest man I had ever seen to that, at that point. But just a really nice guy, and watch him. It's their whole family, his wife as well. So, I'd like to have his wife and his mother back as well at the next one. But, we wanted to kind of get the first one, go through some of his accomplishments and what he's doing and what he has going on. So I'm really kind of disappointed about that 7th generation, because I really wanted to play that one. I'm gonna see if this one's hold on.
My whole life has been, how do we empower our youth in Indian country to stay Indian, keep their tribal heart and perspective, yet go out there and learn the contemporary American system and still be Indian at heart.
What this is behind me, this chain link fence, this is the mass grave.
Suddenly they're going, oh, there was a Holocaust here that we do not acknowledge.
I grew up in boarding schools. They were worse than boot camp, I'd say. I don't know if I can talk about them. Can I?
We were herded around like cattle and depersonalized.
When you see the boarding schools of today, Carlisle and Haskell, the graves at those schools as a result of either suicide, attempted escape, and then, of course, the cover-ups of the beatings that went too far. That's what we're trying to do with the 7th Generation Project, is to provide some other perspectives.
We are the human race. We are all brothers and sisters. We are all related.
You can really see it with this 7th generation of children. They're not living in fear.
This generation, this 7th generation, they will be the ones.
I've learned a lot from our traditional leaders, and I'm a firm believer that a member of the 7th generation will be president of this United States. I believe it.
I knew we had that in there.
No, it was a good save, Rich. Hey, so you met Jim in high school? I thought you were from back east.
Well, I moved out here. Okay, we'll go a little personal here. I actually was born in Los Angeles, and at the age of like 3 or 4, we had moved to Long Island, New York. And so at the age when I started my freshman year in high school is when we moved out here. So my dad grabbed us, thought it was better football out here for us to try to get to college compared to, the football in Long Island, a little bit more 1 yard in a cloud of dust. But you came out here and there was more sort of college type football, basically. And fortunately enough, my brother went and played at NAU and I played at ASU and own a Rose Bowl championship ring from it. So apparently it wasn't the worst call, but, I miss New York and, I go back as, when I can, because I miss it. I still consider that my formative years and home.
Right. I wanted to ask Jim. It's too bad he got to catch that flight to do what he was doing. But I wanted to ask him his experience with racism when he started kind of being a Native American, what it was like, and his story leaving, his childhood and what he's seen. That would have been interesting to get his perspective on that.
Like I said, I definitely would like his mother to come on, of course, and his wife Jill, who does a lot. She's up in Hoopa, up in Northern California. So, definitely would like to have them on. I know he would talk about when he was playing at other stadiums, people would scream at him to cut his hair. So
that's what I was alluding to. I wanted to, I wanted to see what his experiences were in that regard. I'm sure there were many, unfortunately.
It's like Jimmy always leaving you wanting a little more. So he's busy. So I'm glad he was able to join us, and we definitely will circle back around.
Absolutely. So what's on store here coming up? With do you know what Jim's going to be doing beyond?
Yeah, I mean he's just always traveling. Like he said, he's got to go back up. He was just in Washington D.C. A week ago or whatever, and he's just constantly traveling. So whether he's through his movies, through his education, through writing grants, whatever it is, he's just always pushing education, sharing things with people and whatnot. So, I mean, it's the life he lives.
Is that what you did in New York when you went to New York with him?
Well, we went to New York because we went to the Manhattan Film Festival and the Tribeca Film Festival. So his movie was in there. Big shout out to a couple of my New York friends, Mike Jennings and Patrick Reynolds, for joining us in New York City for the event. It was a lot of fun. And like Jimmy mentioned, they won the award for the cinematography. So it was great. And then we went to the Tribeca Film Festival, which, Robert De Niro was there, and it was the J-Lo movie that she did called Halftime. So we got to see a premiere. So yeah, it was a fun little being around all these movies and the big events. It was actually really enjoyable. And we got to sit there and watch the movie. And then people from the audience were asked questions. So he was able to, stand up there and answer questions for people and whatnot. And a lot of people want to know more. A lot of people want to help and say things. I even told him, I know him for 30 years, and I'm not sure if I should say Native American or Indian. There's just some things that I think, and it's out of respect and being cautious. Because I said it to him, you heard me, I always knew him as, Lakota Sioux, OGLALA Sioux. That's the three words I would use. And then, like he said, his mother talked to him about it. And, that's actually the word Sioux was a negative. And I just never knew that. I always thought that was a proud heritage and proud name. So, we try to keep up, and just it's out of respect. And I think the more that people try to do that, and obviously what, our concept for Giving Forest, Yogi, you know what I mean? We just want to have people come on and talk about things they're doing to make the world better. There's enough, negativity out there and enough bad things. And there's a lot of people that are doing good things. So obviously we have some exciting guests that are going to be coming on that we have lined up. So we're excited about the shows coming up. And if anybody out there, if you think you have a good story and you want to come on our show and join us, reach out to us, we'll see if it's a good fit.
Just to the audience, the Giving Forest, there's a lot of different ways to give, obviously, but it may not be obviously to a lot of people. It doesn't always have to be money, mentorship, just being kind, multiple efforts, just being a good person, a good human being. And that's really what we're trying to illuminate. 501s, different organizations, and people who are moving the needle on being nice to other people. We really want to illuminate that. So Rich and I came up with this concept.
Yeah, and like you're saying, for the 501c3s, those would be great. And our first one was Elevate Phoenix. That was a great show with them and Ann Myers Drysdale and Jasmine and Delilah. And for us, with Jimmy, what he does is a little different. So he's creating, films to educate people, and he's writing multi-million-dollar grants for people to fund the things he's going after, which is a big part of getting things to happen in this world. Is you need the funding, you need to make things happen. So, which is part of our other thing is promoting that. So if somebody's interested in, donating money, donating their time, like Yogi's saying, there's a lot of different ways to give. Be a voice, share things. Please like and subscribe, even for us, and make sure you pay attention and, come back and watch and learn about what other people are doing, and maybe get involved in some other philanthropic, ventures that you haven't thought of, or maybe you never heard of. So that's our other thing, is we'd love to bring things up that people haven't heard of, or you know, and promote nonprofits to raise money and, you know, keep their mission going, basically.
Right.
So
what else we have?
What are you gonna
say? So we have next week or upcoming guests.
Yeah, our shows, just so you know, it's every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific time. So we're Arizona time, just for the record. So Pacific time is at 4 o'clock. And yeah, we're just going to keep developing shows and bringing guests on and sharing information with you. And like I said, please, you know, check out the Giving Forest at YouTube, on YouTube. And you'll see our videos, and that's where we would put our shows, as well as some of the other videos that go along with the show, so you can learn more about, you know, the people we have on and what they're doing. So, you know, just make sure you come back and check in, and, you know, and we'll keep bringing you some good content. Any suggestions or any show ideas or whatnot, or even just for our show, since, you know, you heard this, our it's our still first season, but it's our second show. So we're still learning and trying to get better and figuring this all out. So hopefully you'll be patient with us and, you know, give us a little bit of time to get better at what we're doing here.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy didn't expect to leave as early as he had to, so that was
yeah. So sorry about that. I think that's what he said. He literally is jumping on Zoom with like the Senate or something, you know, one of his big people. So we had to acquiesce and just let him go. So. Well, how about we do this? We only have a few minutes left here. So maybe just give a little bit of instead of running the commercial again, maybe just talk about our sponsor a little bit out the door, because obviously our sponsors make it happen and help this show to work. So maybe you can just chat a little bit about that for a few seconds on our way out, and then we'll wrap it up, Yogi.
Yeah, well, Cashware, as I mentioned, 22 plus years. Started out in the hotels and spas, and an interesting transition. A lot of people, because of the weight of the chenilla yarn, it's a washable cashmere feeling type of fabric and yarns. It's unique. It's the authentic chenilla. When people aren't feeling well, a lot of people gift Cashware products to people. Which, Rich, you've had experience with some folks in your family that weren't feeling well, and
yes,
it helps people. So it's not only to curl up with a good book, and feel nice and comfy. Oprah really kick-started the Cashware brand, and I think it was 2005 on her Greatest Gift show. Stedman, her boyfriend, had gifted Oprah a robe. And that really catapulted the brand into the stratosphere. So now all the top resorts around the world, actresses, it's just an incredible. You really have to feel the fabrics to really appreciate it.
You really do. And I have some blankets and some things with it, and it's just a phenomenal product. And like you said, especially if you're a little under the weather, and for corporate gifting, it's a great corporate gift to give people, to either clients or if you're having a big event or stuff. And if you hit that, we have a QR code down in the bottom, which will take you to the website as well. Go take a look, go through the site, learn about it. It's a great product.
Yeah, the thrones were gifted VIP and the swag at the Oscars and Golden Globe Awards. I mean, you're seeing it everywhere.
Yeah.
In those type of venues.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you again. We appreciate our sponsor, Cashware, and we're gonna play our little intro video on the way out, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. And thanks for showing up, and we appreciate it. And this is
keep giving.
Yeah, keep giving. Keep doing whatever you can. So,
thanks, Rich.